Felix Auger-Aliassime is one of the biggest names in men's tennis. Alex Eala is a 21-year-old rising star who has spent the last year forcing the tennis world to pay attention. So why are these two suddenly walking onto the US Open court together? At first, the answer sounds simple. Their teams know each other. They share an agency connection, their people talked, and somehow the pairing came together. But then Felix was asked about it. And he added something that made the whole thing more interesting. He said there was also a natural connection between them. That is the part worth paying attention to, because this isn't just two players randomly thrown together for mixed doubles. Felix is an established name on the men's tour. Eala is coming off the biggest breakthrough of her career, with her profile exploding internationally, and especially among Filipino fans. And the timing is almost impossible to miss. Eala's rise has happened incredibly quickly. She went from being a promising young player to winning her first WTA singles title in Washington, beating established opponents along the way, and proving she could handle the biggest moments. Suddenly, she wasn't just another prospect waiting for her breakthrough. She was a player people were talking about. A player fans were traveling to watch. A player tournaments were putting in increasingly prominent positions. And now she's walking into the US Open alongside Felix Auger-Aliassime. That changes the question. It's not really how did the teams arrange this? The agency connection already gives us that answer. The more interesting question is why this pairing made sense to the people involved in the first place. Because agencies can arrange a match. They can make a phone call. They can put two names on a form. But they can't manufacture chemistry once those players actually step onto the court. And that's where Felix's natural connection comment becomes much more interesting. There is also a tennis connection between them. Both have links to the Rafa Nadal Academy environment in Mallorca, a place that has played an important role in Eala's development. So there is already some familiarity with the same tennis world, the same training environment, and the same people around them. But the real test is still coming, because mixed doubles doesn't care how interesting the story sounds once they walk onto that court in New York. Eala and Felix have to prove that this connection actually works. Felix called it a natural connection, and he never completely explained what he meant. That is exactly what makes the comment interesting. There are obvious reasons these two could work together. They come from overlapping circles in the tennis world. Their teams already have a connection, and both have ties to the Rafa Nadal Academy environment in Mallorca. But then there is the tennis itself. Felix brings the kind of power that can completely change a point with one. His serve can create an immediate advantage. His athleticism allows him to cover enormous amounts of court, and in doubles, that combination can turn a good serve into an easy finishing opportunity. Eala brings something completely different. She's left-handed, aggressive from the baseline, dangerous on returns, and comfortable taking the ball early. She can create awkward angles that force opponents into uncomfortable positions before they even have time to settle into a rally. And that's important in mixed doubles. You don't necessarily want two players doing the exact same thing. You want two players who create different problems at the same time. Felix can bring the power. Eala can bring the angles and pressure. If those pieces click, suddenly opponents have to deal with two completely different threats on opposite sides of the court. But there is another reason this pairing feels bigger than a normal mixed doubles partnership. Look at where Eala was not long ago. She was a prospect trying to establish herself, playing her way up the rankings, and trying to prove she belonged against established professionals. Now, she's a WTA champion. She's beaten major opponents. Her ranking has climbed dramatically. Her Filipino following has exploded. And now, an established elite men's player is publicly standing beside her at the US Open. The pairing didn't create Eala's rise. Her results created the position where a pairing like this suddenly makes sense. And that becomes even more interesting when you look across the net. Elina Svitolina and Gaël Monfils aren't some anonymous opening round opponents. They're two of the most recognizable names in tennis. with years of Grand Slam experience between them. And they're married, so they already have something Eala and Felix don't have yet: natural familiarity as a team. That's the challenge. Eala and Felix may have the power, the athleticism, and the contrasting styles. Svitolina and Monfils have experience and familiarity, so suddenly, this isn't simply a story about why these two were paired together. It's about whether that unexplained natural connection Felix talked about actually survives when the pressure starts, because once the first ball is served, nobody cares how interesting the pairing looked on paper. They have to prove it on the court, because a clever pairing means nothing once the first ball is served. Felix's ranking doesn't win the match. Eala's breakout season doesn't win it. And even a packed Arthur Ashe can't hit a return for them. Across the net, Svitolina and Monfils bring years of Grand Slam experience, a light athleticism, and something Eala and Felix don't have yet: familiarity as a team. That's the real test. Can two players playing together for the first time immediately function like a real doubles team? If they can, this wild card becomes much more interesting than anyone expected. And that's why the mixed doubles story matters to Eala's bigger US Open story. She isn't simply trying to get noticed anymore. She's already attracting major crowds, appearing alongside established stars, and creating opportunities for even more people to discover her. Singles will still be the main event. That's where her career is ultimately being measured. But this pairing tells you how quickly her status has changed. So, why Felix? Why Eala? Maybe the simplest answer is the most revealing. Their team saw an opportunity, Felix saw a natural connection, and Eala's results had already made her impossible to overlook. A few months ago, the question was whether the tennis world would notice Alex Eala now. The question is, who wants to stand beside her next?